we have to do is see the complexity of this problem and the vastness of it. And then we will realize that we are going to have to forget some of these so-called organizational principles and organizational aims and objectives, and realize that the real principle, the real aim, and the real objective is a solution to the problem.
A police state. Just make the Negro neighborhood a police state. It's the most heavily patrolled. It has more police in it than any other neighborhood. Yet it has more crime in it than any other neighborhood. How can you have more cops and more crime? Why? It shows you that the cops must be in cahoots with the criminals. You make my point. That as long as a white man does it, it's all right. A black man is supposed to have no feelings. We want freedom by any means necessary. We want justice by any means necessary. We want equality by any means necessary. We want it now, or we don't take anybody to death.
So whatever kind of action program can be devised to get us the things that are ours by right, then I'm for that kind of action no matter what the action is. I don't think when a man is being criminally treated that some criminal has the right to tell that man what tactics to use to get the criminal off his back. When a criminal starts misusing me, I am going to use whatever is necessary to get that criminal off my back. And the injustice that has been inflicted upon Negroes in this country by Uncle Sam is criminal. Don't blame a cracker in Georgia for your injustices. The government is responsible for the injustices. The government can bring these injustices to halt. And what you and I have to let the man know is we are peaceful people. We are loving people. We love everybody who loves us. But we don't love anybody who doesn't love us.
Hey, peace, uhuru to the family. Welcome, Caribou. My name is Ikemba Ajore. We charge colonialism, and we are having another Malcolm X teaching. So appreciate you joining in. And if this is your first time on the channel, make sure that you subscribe to our channel, hit that notification. Hey, peace, family. Salute, uhuru, and Nkrumah. Norma, Toronto, can't wait to get back out there. Let's supposed to know Toronto is beautiful place, man, beautiful place. I love the brothers and sisters out there in Toronto. Went out there maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, and always looking to go back. Excuse the lighting too. I should have got this lighting together, but it makes me look darker, so I'm cool. I'm cool with it in a sense, man. But appreciate y'all tapping in. Y'all know what it is. This is We Charge Colonialism, media and think tank. We are anti-colonial think tank, Pan-Africanist think tank. When I say Pan-Africanist too, I'm talking about African people connecting all around the world and working together under the theory. I adhere to the theory of African internationalism that has been given to us by Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party. So, I do use that theoretical framework. But when I say Pan-African, I'm just talking about that unity of African people all around the world. But we have to be on the same, we have to have the same attentions, objectives, and goals, though, in order for us to liberate ourselves, right? So we can't have people in our camp who are looking to integrate into colonial capitalism and calling themselves Pan-Africanists and people who are trying to bring about the liberation of African people from the system of colonial capitalism. There's that's a contradiction right there. So, we have to be clear with some and theory gives us that clarity. African internationalism gives us that clarity. So just putting that out there. But We Charge Colonialism. Make sure you visit our website. We got a new article up, man. Shout out to Naheem Ayel out of Brooklyn, who just published the article on there. So that's wechargecolonialism.org. going to put this down at the bottom for folks. So I hope everybody's feeling good. This particular study that we do is focusing on the life of Malcolm X, looking at Malcolm X's life, his experiences. And, the goal is to learn, though, from his life and experiences, not just come here and just study, right, and just talk about Malcolm, the person, and not be able to take something away from these studies to empower us individually and to empower us as a community. And that's something that I'm hoping to do with this. So what are some lessons that we can learn from Malcolm X, his experiences and his teachings, taking all of that and being able to apply that to our own life and experiences. So this is the fourth one that I'm doing so far. If you haven't seen the other teachings, definitely go back and check those out. The first one, I was focusing on chapter 1 of Manny Marable's book, Life and Reinvention, and Les Paynes' book, The Dead Are Arising. So today, I'm actually going back to Les Paynes' book and looking at chapter 2. I want to look at Les Paynes chapter 2 and look at the autobiography of Malcolm X, his first chapter. And the chapter 1 of the autobiography was titled Nightmare. And Les Paynes' book is titled Storms of Racism, I believe. And so, in both of those chapters, it kind of just looks at colonialism's impact on Malcolm, the individual, but more so his family, because in the autobiography, Malcolm is focusing, Malcolm is discussing his life as a child. When that opening chapter, he's sort of talking, he opens up with his mother being pregnant. And I'm going to look at that in a minute. I actually want to do a comparison of a few texts with their opening chapters, but his mother is pregnant. And so we're looking at Malcolm, the birth of Malcolm in that first chapter of the autobiography, and he's focusing on like what's happening to him and his family as a child, as he remembers it. In Les Paynes' book, if for those who was here during the first teaching, I was talking about the two chapters, Les Paynes' book and Manny Marable. At the end of Les Paynes' book chapter, he was ending with the lynching of Will Brown. Les Paynes is focusing more so on that chapter 1 of everything that is like the context that Malcolm's parents, the world that Malcolm's parents are living in, and what drove them to move to Omaha. So Malcolm's parents, when Les Paynes is finishing his chapter, Malcolm's parents are in Omaha, but he just got finished, Payne that is, just got finished telling us what was going on in Omaha right before Malcolm's parents moved there. And so right around that time, you're seeing the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. Malcolm's parents are going to move to Omaha around 1921. You're going to see the rise of the Klan during that particular time. So now before I get into the chapters, I want to, of course, give a shout out to the Klan Malcolm X State Committee, which I'm a part of, and give a quick promo to a couple of events that's coming up. February the 23rd, if you are in Philly, Philadelphia, or the Philly area, come out to the Legacy of Malcolm X event. It's going to be a seminar. It's lasting from 1 p.m. Eastern time to 7 p.m. So make sure you come out to that. That's in West Philly at the Rotunda. It's February 23rd. Totally free, completely free event. Going to be looking at the last message of Malcolm X, which was given on February the 14th, the day after his house was firebombed with his children in it and his wife. And so he still travels and gives this speech despite everything that was happening at that time. And Malcolm will lose his life 7 days later after after giving this speech. The second thing I want to bring up, still in Philadelphia, the 10th annual Malcolm X Day Festival. Yes, this is the 10th annual Malcolm X Day Festival. So if you're in Philadelphia in the area and you want to come out, definitely show up. If you want to vend, reach out to us. If you want to volunteer, reach out to us. We'll be a part of this momentous event. This is going to be the 100-year celebration of the birth of Malcolm X. So make sure you come out to that, man. If you're in the area, you don't want to miss it. I think it's going to be the biggest thing going on May 17th that day. And then we plan on going up to the burial ground, going to New York on May 19th to pay homage to Malcolm X. So yeah, that's going to be happening. And then if you want to support the festival, we're definitely looking for support. You can cash at CMXD, Claim Malcolm X Day, CMXD PHL 65. Send whatever you have. It could be $1, $2, $5, $1,000, whatever you have. Send it to that Cash App right there. All those proceeds will go to the festival, and hopefully you'll be a part of that festival. Hope to see you there. So now, let's get into a few things, man. First thing I want to start off with, I'm definitely focusing just on the autobiography and Les Paynes' book, but as I was like looking at the chapters, I was curious on how all the, like not all of them, but how several other texts open up, biographies open up on, about Malcolm's life. And so I'm just going to read a few of these openings. I'm going to start with, which one should I start with? Let's look at the autobiography, right? So Malcolm's telling his story with the autobiography. The thing about autobiographies, too, which we should keep in mind, there's, of course, this subjectivity of the person who's telling the story. And as we do these studies, you're going to see sometimes there's going to be some discrepancies in the story that Malcolm is telling and from those who are doing the research. And that has a lot to do with just memory. And, you know, you're trying to remember your story, and we have selective memory, right? There's some things we just don't want to remember. There's things that had such an impact on our life that we see it vividly like it was yesterday. So we have to keep that in mind when we're looking at Malcolm's autobiography. And also, you know, with the person who's telling the story, particularly about themselves, there's going to be things that you just don't want people to know because it's just so personal, right? So some of these other texts that we're looking at, and there's like a certain image too that you probably want people to have of you. So there's, you know, you're not going to reveal a lot of things. So it's not as if Malcolm is telling lies in his autobiography. It's just a lot of things that's being left out for whatever reason. And you have a focus. There's a certain, you know, image again that you are trying to put out there for people to have. And so, for instance, when Malcolm is talking, just fast forward, when Malcolm is talking about his childhood and his early years as an adolescent in Boston and in New York, there's a lot of things that he's telling us that we see the criminal side of Malcolm, but when we look at some of the biographies, I mean, Malcolm was really worse than he even portrayed. We knew that Malcolm was bad from what he told us, but then when we get into like the deeper research and some of those primary sources, it's like, okay, you know, I knew Malcolm was bad, but this is he was doing things that I wouldn't expect, right? That's what we find out when we do that research. I never knew Malcolm was this bad. He was this way. I don't want to get too specific because I'm trying to like leave that conversation for later on as we delve into his story. But when you look at how the autobiography starts off, and I'm just going to go to the autobiography. Malcolm, in that opening chapter, right, he's going to begin with his mother being pregnant with him. And so he says, when my mother was pregnant with me, she told me later, a party of hooded Ku Klux Klan riders galloped up to our home in Omaha, Nebraska one night. Surrounding the house, brandishing their shotguns and rifles, they shouted for my father to come out. My mother went to the front door and opened it, standing where they could see her pregnant condition. She told them that she was alone with her 3 small children and that my father was away preaching in Milwaukee. Now, again, if you read The Dead of the Horizon, this is how Les Paynes opens up the book, The Dead of the Horizon. Just take this. But with Les Paynes, again, like Malcolm's telling the story from memory. He's telling the story from not necessarily memory because he wasn't born yet, but from the memory of the stories that was told to him from his mother, from his brothers, right? But people are being very intentional when they're writing the biography. So when they're collecting these stories, they're writing everything down. And they're being more objective in regards to what they want to discuss. They just want to put out the full story. So Les Paynes, when he begins the chapter, his chapter 1, Born Against the Current, he says, now look how descriptive and detailed he is about the same story that Malcolm is talking about. The metallic clicking of hoofbeats on a gravel road drew 5-year-old Wilfred to the small pane window. His mother, whipping her hands, hurried to the front door as a group of horsemen with flickering torches rode up to their wood frame home on the outskirts of Omaha, Nebraska. Little, yelled one of the half-dozen men. Louise Little said that her husband was not at home, and with the tree leaves rustling in the evening breeze, the horsemen steadied their mounts in the front yard and declared that they were the knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Get that nigger out here now, one of the strangers shouted. Haltingly, a young housewife, precise in her West Indian accent, said that her family didn't cause trouble or bother neighbors, that they minded their own business. The excitement of the horses died down for young Wilfred as his mother folded her arms. I'm gonna stop there, but I mean, you can see like he's being very descriptive and detailed in telling this story. I appreciate how what's happening now though. So Les Paynes, he's actually he's telling that story beginning with his mother, Malcolm's mother, being pregnant. He's going to circle back around though and give you a narrative of everything that leads up to the Little family moving to Omaha. Now, in chapter 2, Les Paynes is still in Omaha. The Littles are still in Omaha. And just to fast forward, just so you know, like Les Paynes is going to discuss that experience in Omaha. And when he ends chapter 2, the Littles family is going to be moving to Milwaukee. That's Les Paynes' book. He ends chapter 2 with the Littles moving to Milwaukee. And why do they move to Milwaukee? That opening story that we just read in both those chapters. So what happens to Louise Little, Malcolm's mother, that very day with the Ku Klux Klan terrorizing her and her 3 children, right? So this is, when we talk about dreams turn to nightmares, such important context, man, because we know Malcolm X, we may know his story, but what made Malcolm X? What shaped his family? Because it's his mother who's going to eventually like lose her mind. She's going to be dealing with psychological issues as a result of all of this that's happening. The pressure of colonialism she's finally going to crack. Malcolm discusses that in this opening chapter, but we're not there in his autobiography, but we're not there yet in Les Paynes' book. When Les Paynes ends again, chapter 2, the family's moving to Milwaukee. If you recall, in Manny Marable's book, Manny Marable ends chapter 1 with the Littles family moving to Lansing. I'm sorry, they're already in Lansing, with Malcolm going from East Lansing, Michigan to Boston. He's adolescent. So that's how much ground Manny Marable is covered in chapter 1. We're not even in Milwaukee yet with Les Paynes, because they moved to Milwaukee and then they end up going from Milwaukee to East Lansing, Michigan. So Malcolm is only 18 months when the Littles is moving to Milwaukee. That's how chapter 2 ends. Both of the chapters are great. So one of the things I'm noticing is Malcolm's story with the biographers such as Manny Marable and Les Paynes. What they're doing is that they are taking Malcolm's story and giving you more context. So when you read the autobiography, and I think that's why I like Manny Marable's book so much, you know, and I know he has a lot of haters out there for good reason. Hey, peace to the family. I appreciate y'all joining, man. Definitely, you know, like and share too. Like and share. And subscribe if this is your first time here as well. So yeah, man, we talking about right now, if you just joining, just talking about this American nightmare, the dream that they sell us. But really, you know, that dream is a nightmare for Black people in America. And part of that reason is I'm gonna say fundamental reason is colonial capitalism, because, you know, this pursuit of profit that one group is able to pursue at the expense of another group. This marginalization of Black people in America under the capitalist system, it keeps them at bay. It allows whites and white immigrants to be able to come over here. They're all immigrants, but to be able to come over here and be able to achieve wealth, the American dream this American dream within the society, at the expense of African people. This has been the history. And so this is what you're really getting from both of these stories when you get into it. Malcolm, he talks about, before I get into, again, because I said I was going to do this, and then I'm going to jump back to the two chapters. But just looking at the way Manny Marable opens up the book, and in comparison to the way that the other chapters opened up. So I'm just going to chapter 1 because he does have a prologue, Life Beyond the Legend, right? But I'm going to go to chapter 1. And chapter 1 is called Up You Mighty Race, right? And he starts off the chapter not like Malcolm and not like Les Paynes, who begins with Malcolm's mother being pregnant and their house being, or the family being terrorized by the Ku Klux Klan, and Earl Little not being there. He's in Milwaukee, right? That's how they start. But this is how Manny Marable starts. He says Malcolm X's father, Earl Little Sr., was born in Reynolds, Georgia. That's how he begins the chapter. He begins with the father. In Reynolds, Georgia, on July 29th, 1890, a former son who was frequently called Early. He had barely 3 years of formal schooling, although as a teenager, he learned carpentry, which provided him with a livelihood. In 1909, he married a local African-American woman, Daisy Mason, and in quick succession had 3 children, Ella, Mary, and Earl Jr. Reynolds, a small town in Georgia, southern corner. I'm going to stop there, but that's how it opens up the chapter. It opens up the chapter speaking about Earl Little. I don't have an issue with that. I guess because when you think about it, the father, I guess, you know, the father having 3 children who are going to be relatives, right? The siblings of Malcolm X, maybe beginning there is a great way to start. And I guess they all start good. I guess they had their own way that they wanted to open up the chapters and focus, because it's not as if they're not spoken about in the Les Paynes book. Malcolm doesn't speak much about his father's background. He does say that he had 3 children, though, 3 other children. Malcolm doesn't mention that his mother is from that his mother lived in Montreal. So I'm wondering if he knew that, because he said his father met and married his mother in Philadelphia. Me being born in Philadelphia and raised in Philadelphia, I don't have no problem with that story, but I don't want to be, biased. He actually meets his mother in Montreal. They moved to, and I gather, I think from Les Paynes' book, Manny Marable may talk about this too, that they married in Montreal, moved to Philadelphia. They were definitely together there. And from Philadelphia, they go to Omaha. Now, Malcolm is going to discuss this. One of the other things that Malcolm discusses, his father being a Garveyite. And I actually wanted to look at this. So to the point being made here, the ills of racialized let me put it up here. White hegemony, domination, Western imperialism. And you get all of this in these opening chapters, which I think is so important, because the Littles family is only, I mean, you can look at, they're just an example, right? They're a microcosm of what is happening to Black people and Black families throughout America, right? So when you look at their story, having to move, they're from Georgia. They move out to Omaha to live out there with Earl Little's two brothers. 2 of Earl's brothers moved to Omaha. Why did they move to Omaha? Because of the opportunities that were presented out there, right? This great migration that's taking place because of the difficulty, right? Because of the terrorism that is existing throughout the South. So now they have to look for opportunities out west, opportunities in the north. But the most opportunities that are given to them is opportunities to work for white people, and so mostly some are able to acquire land, but for the most part, most Black people don't have the resources to acquire that land. And when they have land, part of the problem too, like the independence of Malcolm's parents was looked at as a threat. They were being terrorized. When you think about, they talk about Black Wall Street all the time, and Negro Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, that is, right? There's this sort of envy and jealousy of Black independence in America. If you read the story of Ida B. Wells, who went on this crusade against lynching because 2 of her friends were lynched. And why were they lynched? They were lynched because they had businesses, that they were independent and they was outdoing their white competitors. Look into the story. So this is the history. Let me see this. The Great Migration, another missing propaganda that had Africans in the chokehold back then. Africans had to study that. Hey, I would build with you on that. For sure. I like that. So now let me one more. I want to go to Bruce Perry. Bruce Perry. I'm only doing it for the sake of comparison, man. But this white man, I think some consider like his biography to be the first like definitive biography on Malcolm X. And Manny Marable does use Bruce Perry as a source. Les Paynes, I'm not completely sure. I could look. He may use. He definitely probably looks at Bruce Perry as well. But I know Manny Marable for sure doesn't completely rely on Bruce Perry, but he does cite him multiple times. Bruce Perry starts off his chapter saying that Earl Little had great expectations for his forthcoming 7th child, according to a family tradition that sprang from ancient legends ascribing magic power to the number 7. The child would be blessed with the best attributes of the ancestral bloodline. It was destined for greatness, particularly if it were male. In anticipation of the youngest future achievement, achievements. Earl's father wrote from his Georgia farm and directed that the infant be named John after himself. The baby was born on May 19th, 1929 in Omaha, Nebraska. I'll stop there. So you see, they're getting right to it. Bruce Perry's getting right to it. Malcolm's being born. And so the birth of Malcolm is happening right from the beginning in Bruce Perry's book. You don't get that rapid birth, right? It takes time for the other authors, Manny Marable and Les Payne. They're building up to the birth of Malcolm. They're telling you more. And part of like what Les Payne does in his first chapter, he gives you that rise of the Ku Klux Klan, and he talks about what happens in Omaha, the lynching of Will Brown. Les Payne in the second chapter now is going back to this Ku Klux Klan. He's giving you that context. Who are the Ku Klux Klan? You know, what sparked the rise of the Ku Klux Klan? This is what Les Payne is doing. And then he moves into Garvey. Like, who is Marcus Garvey? So he kind of sets up, like, basically telling you that the coming of Marcus Garvey had a lot to do with this white backlash that has taken place. Hey, everybody wanted it, not just MLK, but shout out to MLK, because I know tomorrow is his is the holiday that y'all President Trump is going to be, you know, inaugurated on. Notice I said y'all president, not y'all president. Let me not mess with y'all. I know y'all too radical. I hope y'all too radical to be claiming some Donald Trump, especially here in the Malcolm X space. But so check this out. Going back to like the terrorism, right? Malcolm talks about his father being this Garveyite, and why he was such a staunch Garveyite. What happened to Earl Little? What was his experience that drove him to want to be a Garveyite? Now, I'm going to read this from the autobiography. Listen to what Malcolm says. He says, among the reasons my father had decided to risk and dedicate his life to help disseminate this philosophy among his people was that he had seen four of his 6 brothers died by violence. 3 of them killed by white men, including one by lynching. What my father could not know then was that of the remaining three, that's including himself, only one, my uncle Jim, would die in bed of natural causes. Northern white police were later to shoot my uncle Oscar. And my father was finally himself to die by the white man's hands. It has always been my belief that I too will die by violence. This is Malcolm talking. I have done all that I can to be prepared. It's prophetic, man. Damn. All right. Let me ask you guys, how would y'all feel? Man, I'm I'm an empath, so I just felt that when I read that. 6 black men, including his father, 6 black men, including his father, were murdered. 5 of them by the hands of white men. So I'm assuming that one of them, intercommunal violence. There was some intercommunal violence there. 5 of them, including his father, was killed by white men. One was they all were lynchings. I know he said one was a lynching, but what was the murder? The murder by the hands of a white man or woman. What else could it have been for, right? Why else would they have killed them? It was a lynching. If it wasn't justified, I'll tell you that much. I know it wasn't justified. And so that's what Malcolm states. So you can imagine that. And it's when you think of it, man, I know Malcolm at the end of his life, that's a strong person because it was easy for him to latch on to the idea that white people are the devil. when he started thinking about, hold on, my uncles, my own experience. I'm sitting here doing 8 to 10 years for burglary, not armed robbery, for burglary. So he's looking at the system and how the system is everywhere he turns, not the system, but the people who has designed the system and are in control, the way that they are terrorizing, the pressures that they are putting on Malcolm and Black people in general. He's saying to himself, like, they have to be the devil. But later on, you know, he and of course we'll get to that when we continue to have these discussions, but there's a point where he is going to be accepting of white people if they were to transform, right? They would have to go through this cultural and psychological revolution. Because Malcolm, he's not going to be fooled, you know, by white people. He was no longer religious about white people in regards to the Nation of Islam and their ideas of like Yakub grafting white man to be the devil. So this inherency of white people being devil, he will move away from. But he understood that they psychologically, that white people they're ill. There's this disease of racism that is preventing them from joining the rest of humanity. And so that's something that we have to deal with. So he wasn't ready to turn his back on the white man just yet. So he talks about that. So I'm going to bring it back to Garvey because I think that's important. They both talk about Garvey. Les Paynes takes a lot of time in his text talking about Garveyism. But I want to move just like to the end of the chapter 1. Malcolm's talking about this nightmare. Malcolm speaks about his father. Yeah, I like the language you're using. I like the language that you're using. So Malcolm is talking about, he talked about his father, then he talks about his mother. I think this is important, and I want to highlight this. He talks about his mother finally like breaking down due to just the pressure of the system. I've talked about this in the other podcast, but there's so much pressure that she's dealing with now, having to raise 9 children on her own, her husband being murdered, the state trying to take her children away from her. She doesn't have the resources to be able to put food on the table, to feed her children. So now they want to take her children away from her. Malcolm, he's being impacted by this. One thing too, like Malcolm does, he talks about how it affects him personally. The other, in the biographies, they only can speak from the experience, secondhand experience, right? Or from secondhand sources. So Malcolm is able to tell us the negative impact it's having on him. Psychologically is bringing him down. And he wants to be in the household with his mother and his brothers and sisters. Though he's able to adjust to being moved out of the house and then being put into foster care, is not being with family. I think that's really going to drive him to part of the reason why he's going to be driven to criminal activities later. Like that family structure has been broken down. And how did it break down? It was broken down by the system. And he talks, here he gets into his mother, watching his mother lose her mind, right? Going to visit his mother didn't recognize him. He asked her a question, she didn't respond to the question. And so the family and all, they're dealing with it because they don't know what else to do, right? So, they have to deal with the best way that they know how. Who prepares children to be able to handle the psychological break that their mother is going through? And that the system itself isn't going to come in and provide the services for Black people in this system to be able to deal with the psychological trauma that his mother has been dealing with. And so he says, she stared at me. She didn't know who I was. Her mind, when I tried to talk, to reach her was somewhere else. I asked Mama, do you know what day it is? She said, staring, all the people have, quote unquote, all the people have gone. Oh, man, I can't describe how I felt. The woman who had brought me into the world and nursed me and advised me and chastised me and loved me didn't know me. It was as if I was trying to walk up the side of a hill of feathers. I looked at her. I listened to her talk, but there was nothing I could do. I truly believe that if ever a state social agency destroyed the family, it destroyed ours. We wanted and tried to stay together. Our home didn't have to be destroyed, but the welfare, the courts, and their doctor gave us the 1-2-3 punch. And ours was not the only case of this kind. That's important. Not the only case, right? I knew I wouldn't be back to see my mother again because it could make me a very vicious and dangerous person. Knowing how they had looked at us as numbers and as a case in their book, not as human beings. And knowing that my mother in there was a statistic that didn't have to be, that existed because of the society's failure, hypocrisy, greed, and lack of mercy and compassion. Hence, this is what Malcolm says. Hence, I have no mercy or compassion in me for a society that will crush people and then penalize them for not being able to stand up under the weight. I'm with you wholeheartedly, 100%. That's how I feel about this society, 100%. I'll read it again. Malcolm said, hence, I have no mercy or compassion in me for a society that will crush people and then penalize them for not being able to stand up under the weight. I have rarely talked to anyone about my mother, for I believe that I am capable of killing a person without hesitation who happened to make the wrong kind of remark about my mother. So I purposely don't make any opening for some fool to step into. Back then, when our family was destroyed in 1937, Wilfred and Hilda were old enough so that the state let them stay on their own in the big 4-room house that my father had built. I'm gonna stop there, but he's ending the chapter. That's the last page right there. He's ending the chapter with that story, and then he's gonna go into chapter 2 with Mascot, right? So when you think about that story, like the X film, for all those who've seen the X film, the X film is going to take a lot of themes from Malcolm's autobiography and put those in the movie. So sometimes, not sometimes, but when you're watching the movie, there may be things that are inaccurate because it's basically taking these themes and sort of create, like, sort of conflating different events, different people into one. So for instance, I talked about Bemby, who was Bembry, whose real name is John Bembry. In the X film, Bemby is a member of the Nation of Islam who's incarcerated, who's going to bring Malcolm into the Nation of Islam. But Bembry, the real figure, was not a part of the Nation of Islam, and it's actually Malcolm's brothers and sisters that bring Malcolm into the Nation of Islam. So that's what Spike Lee does in the film, which, I mean, it's Hollywood, so you should expect that. But this particular, so when you think about what Malcolm just said, it brings you to this particular scene in the film, right? It's the inspiration for this scene right here, if you look at this. So I'm just to pull this up.
My man. The word is excuse me, boy.
Excuse me don't shine my shoes, my man.
You should have stayed out my way. Old country nigga. What you gonna do? Go home to your mama?
nigga. Don't you ever in your life say anything against my mother.
Oh, man, what do you do, my friend?
All right. So again, you know, my taking Spike Lee is going to, you know, take that, put that sentiment. Denzel is playing out that sentiment based off of what Malcolm is saying in that opening chapter. So again, you get that the breaking down of Malcolm's family in the opening chapter of the autobiography. But he's going to continue. He's not yet in Boston, right? Malcolm's going to talk more about his childhood. Now going to Les Payne's book, I want to, you know, quickly, there's a few things because Les Payne is going to talk about the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, and Manny Marable does this as well, but Les Payne is going to go into a little bit more detail. Because what Marable does in one chapter is again, he talks about the Klan, he talks about Garvey, and he's talking about Malcolm's whole childhood all the way up to him moving to Boston. Les Payne is taking his time and he's giving you more details. When he talks about the Klan, he goes all the way back to the end of the Civil War. This is in chapter 2 in regards to the rise of the Klan and the terrorism that was waged against African people during the Reconstruction period. The end of Reconstruction and the Tilden Hayes compromise. Les Payne brings all of this, so he's giving you that context. You know, if that's not the focus of his book, of course, so he's not going into too much detail, but he is giving you sort of this context of what's happening, that the color line, how the color line is being drawn in America. When we get to both Manny Marable and Les Payne talks about this, but the racist president Woodrow Wilson, who's going to have the motion picture. What is it? What's that motion? The silent film. What's that silent film called? Somebody could put that in the chat. The Nat Turner movie had the same name. What was the name of that Nat Turner movie that just came out? I can't believe it's too much on my brain right now. Birth of a Nation. Thank you. Birth of the Nation. So Woodrow Wilson's playing Birth of the Nation at the White House. This is there's going to be this resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan at this time, right? In the around 1915, this film is coming out. So you see in 1915, 1917, it's reemergence. Definitely like after World War I. Now you have this competition. People are coming back from the war, and now Black people are having to compete with white folks for jobs, and particularly white immigrants who are coming over. And so you have these race riots that are going to be taking place. Salam. These race riots that are going to be taking place. Let me call them massacres. You have these massacres. You have white people attacking, terrorizing Black people. Put it like that, because that's what it is. In 1919, known as the Red Summer, right? The Will Brown incident happens in 1919, but you also have in 1917 this East St. Louis. The terrorism and the massacre of Black people in East St. Louis is going to take place in 1917. The NAACP is going to hold a silent march in New York City as a result of that. So this is happening. You have the rise of the Klan. Les Payne is giving you that context. At the same time, you have the rise of the Klan. What do you have? You have the emergence of the Garvey movement. These things are happening simultaneously, right? And so Marcus Garvey and Les Payne, he's detailing this. I'm telling you, if you haven't read the book, you definitely should check it out. he's detailing this. He's talking about the influence of Booker T. Washington. He gets into because Du Bois and Garvey are both influenced by Booker T. Washington before Du Bois and Booker T. Washington have their rift, right, and disagreement, ideological disagreement on strategy, right. There's going to be these divergent paths to empowering, advancing Black people in America. Garvey is going to be influenced by Booker T. Washington and he wants to come to America to meet Booker T, but Booker T passes in 1915. So the Black leader, the leader of Black people, right, passes away in 1915, and so Garvey comes in 1917. Garvey is going to begin to open chapters all throughout the Americas and eventually the world. But what happens is there is going to be a movement. Du Bois and Garvey, Les Paynes talks about it, are going to be at odds. Don't have a lot of time to get into details, but the one thing I wanted to bring up, I want to show some of these sources. Les Paynes talks about this undermining of the Garvey movement. And there's a few things I want to bring up. First of all, when we look at World War I think it's important for us to understand how the Garvey movement is being undermined and why it's being undermined. This book right here, Mark Ellis, he writes this book, Race, War, and Surveillance, African Americans in the United States. I'm going to make this bigger. Make sure you can see that. All right, hold on. All right, good. I think y'all can see that pretty good. So Joe Springard, just so you know, Joe Springard is going to become the president of the NAACP. I think he's the first or second president of the NAACP. So keep that in mind. It's important context. I'll start here. Due to continuing northward migration of Black labor, all right, Springard and Scott also attempted to prevent the showing of D.W. Griffin's film, The Birth of a Nation, because they argued its portrayal of Black men as thieves and rapists during Reconstruction was likely to provoke violence and impede the war effort. The Charleston, South Carolina intelligence officer was ordered to determine why the distribution of various Black newspapers, including the Chicago Defender, had been interfered with in Georgia, while the San Antonio, Texas officer was sent to warn the editors of K. Lamity's Harpoon that their articles attacking the conscription of Black troops laid them open to prosecution under the Espionage Act. Again, going back to Joe Springard, it's important. He's going to become the head officer, I believe, of the Military Intelligence Agency, the MIA. The MIA is the predecessor of the CIA. All right, this is important. So you have the MIA, which is the predecessor of the CIA, right? Joe Springard is a part of this. Now, they're not going to let me go. Let me see. Hold on. In order to allay growing fears at home, see if y'all can see this. Growing fears at home about the conditions experienced by Black soldiers in France, Springard persuaded this General Staff cable Pershing in mid-June to ask for a clear, specific, and emphatic rebuttal of rumors apparently circulated by German agents, alleging that Black troops were being put on the front lines to minimize white casualties and left die. Why didn't I let me show all this right now? Hold on, y'all. Oh, okay. Here we go. This is important. Let me get to the part I want to get to, right? The contradictions inherent in Springard's position of bold civil rights activist in the most reactionary agency of an anti-radical administration were reflected in his views on political expression by Blacks. Right? Springard knew how real their grievances were, but he had misgivings about their being aired during the war and believed an important objective of MIB work on race should be the molding of Black opinion. So MIB and MIA is used interchangeably. MIB, I think, is military intelligence. I don't think it's bureaucracy, but no, it's not bureaucracy. Military intelligence might be bureaucracy, but it's the same agency, right? And somebody can do a quick check and put it in the chat. That would be helpful. The MIB. So you heard what I just read, right? But he had misgivings about their being aired during the war, and believed an important objective of MIB work on race should be the molding of Black opinion. Joe Springer, this I'm gonna call him a Zionist. This Zionist, right, who is president of the NAACP, who is now working for an intelligence agency during wartime, says the most important work of the MIB is to mold Black opinion. This is Garvey is organizing in this environment. Radical, what they would call radical Black men and women are organizing in this environment where there are people who are trying to shape and mold the opinion of Black leaders as well as the masses, right? So I'm gonna read just a little bit more. Hence came the elaborate plan he conceived for convening Black newspaper editors and other spokesmen, giving them a closed forum in which to impress on government officials the cause and extent of Black dissatisfaction, and in turn allowing the administration to remind the African American leadership of its duty to sustain morale and patriotism during the war. It's been in the news lately and all over social media. What is Nelly and Snoop Dogg doing, supporting Donald Trump all of a sudden? Do they have, because nowadays entertainers are leaders in the Black community, right? Are these people, is it their duty to sustain the morale and patriotism during a time of war? Because we are at war, right? We at war. Somebody mentioned reparations. We at war, right? To get those reparations, to free the land, to be a self-determined people, right? To stop the oppression, exploitation, to stop the brutality and terrorism against our communities in so many ways, and the food, psychologically through the media, right? All of this has happened. So we are at war, but is it their duty? I'm just using them as, examples because that's big in the news. So we have to be conscious that there's this psychological war, that's psyops, right? That's taking place. Now I'm gonna close that. Again, the reason I'm getting into Garvey, because Les Paynes spends a lot of time talking about Garvey, and Malcolm brings up Garvey in his opening chapter. And again, Manny Marable's first chapter is called Up You Mighty Race, right? So they're showing the importance because both of Malcolm's parents are Garveyites. So again, going to the leadership, there's sort of this, now there is this coordinated effort to get rid of Garvey, because Garvey is leading a mass African working class movement, not just in America, but around the world. So I want to pull this up just to show the government effort to undermine Black leadership and Black power, right, during this time. Black nationalism, because Garvey is an internationalist and a nationalist, right? So when we look at one of the first Black FBI agents, right? No, not that one. Hold on. Not that. Hold on, where are we at? Oh, here we go. So check this out. So 5 surprising facts about FBI's first African American agent. Let's just go to Agent Zero. The Bureau of Investigation, the precursor to the FBI, hired Jones for its new General Intelligence Division, created to track the activities of subversive groups in the wake of terrorist bombings. Jones' background and weapons training would prove invaluable, according to the U.S. Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Jones moved between the New York and Pittsburgh offices and adopted the code number 800 for its reports, so he was known internally as Agent 800. 3, let me see, make sure. All right, y'all can see that. Cool. So J. Edgar Hoover, the future FBI director, was Jones' direct supervisor. In 1920, Hoover sent Jones to infiltrate the Black Nationalist Association, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, created by Marcus Garvey. Garvey was a Jamaican businessman who believed in racial separatism and rubbed shoulders with the Ku Klux Klan. Bullshit, man. Yeah, I'm sorry I even read that, man. But anyway, Jones went undercover seeking evidence of Garvey's subversive activities during the Red Scare, a period in U.S. history where there was borderline hysteria over the perceived threat posed by communists, also often derogatively referred to as Reds. Garvey also ran the Black Line Shipping Company, however, and Hoover also suspected Garvey of mail fraud. Jones' job was to prove it. Y'all heard that, right? First Black agent. Give it up for your first Black FBI agent undermining the Garvey movement. Come on, man. Like, you can't make this stuff up, bro. And J. Edgar Hoover, from Garvey movement to the Black Panther Party. But J. Edgar Hoover is representing the United States government. Come on now. So let's not, it's not J. Edgar Hoover. The United States government undermined the Garvey movement, and they've been undermining Black movements for self-determination all the way up to the Black Panther Party. We know J. Edgar Hoover then, up until this day. That's why any movement we have trying to organize our folks and be international, we start building with African people around the world and really developing economic and political relationships with people outside the world. That is a threat to the internal security of the United States. But when you talk about a threat to the internal security of the United States, you're talking about a threat to the internal security of white people. It's white power that is at stake. That's what the issue is at the end of the day. Yeah, they do. It gets deeper though. So we talk about that FBI agent. There was a movement, the Garvey Must Go movement. Les Payne brings this up in his chapter. He doesn't go deep into it, but I do. Because I got the time. So the Garvey Must Go campaign, right? This is real stuff. You can't make this stuff up, man. You can't make this stuff up. The Garvey Must Go campaign. This was a movement of African Americans to get Garvey out of the United States. They worked with the United States government to remove Garvey from the United States, right? I want to go here, but by 1920, A. Philip Randolph and other Black leaders, some of whom had supported Garvey after his arrival in the United States, came to believe that Garvey's program for Black advancement was unsound and that Garvey himself was a charlatan. A. Philip Randolph, man, much respect to him. Like, I want to say he did some good things, right? But come on now, man. Come on now. Do we give him a pass? I'm going to let the people, when the people get the truth, I let the people decide, man, because sometimes I think I'm too soft. I feel like I'm too soft when it comes to our people, man. But A. Philip Randolph was a part of that movement to get Garvey out of here. So, I mean, let's look at this. Though they admired his skills as a propagandist, these prominent Black critics derided Garvey's proposed solutions for the problems of African Americans. If you don't like what the man's doing, then out-organize him. Out-organize my folks. If we don't like what other people are doing, out-organize them. Don't work with the enemy to undermine our own people, because everybody is potentially, our people all had the potential to be a revolutionary. And some people may be too far gone, but depending on the movements, I'm gonna say like, yeah, if it's some like neo-colonialist stuff, then that's different. But if we're talking about fighting against the system, if we both have the same objectives and goals, then why am I trying to undermine you? All right. But though they admire his skills as a propagandist, yeah. So I'm going to stop there to go this Garvey Must Go campaign. I just want to get to some of the things that they did. Right. One of the things they did was start a organization opposed to. See, I can't do it, man. But I need people to do it for me. Oh man. So this is one of the things A. Philip Randolph would do. Was create this organization, Friends of Negro Freedom. And you can see the time from 1920 to 1930, but they weren't really active. Do I got this on screen for y'all? Yeah. So the Friends of Negro Freedom was created in 1920. This was done after they caught wind that Garvey was organizing a conference in 1920. In August 1920. So y'all know about the Garvey, the big conference that took place in New York City, Madison Square Garden. Garvey is going to do this in 1920. A. Philip Randolph is going to try to organize his own conference in opposition. So, and I'm saying in opposition because of the proximity of the time that A. Philip Randolph is doing this. It's because the research, I mean, when you do the research, there's nobody who's saying that he did this in opposition to Garvey. This is my interpretation, right? Because why are you doing this in 1920? And you already, it's on record that you are against Garvey. You don't like Garvey. You don't like what he's doing. So all of a sudden you start an organization, the Friends of Negro Freedom, which is going to stop being active. I know it says 1930, but it actually stops being active soon as Garvey is jailed and then later deported. Friends of Negro Freedom is going to be no more after Garvey leaves. So it just shows that they weren't sincere in the creation of this organization. It was just meant to be to undermine what Garvey was doing, unfortunately. So Friends of Negro Freedom, and this stuff I'll pull up. Hopefully y'all do some more research on, because I do think it's good history. Good. Oh, what's going on here? What we got going on here? Friends of Negro Freedom was created by A. Philip Randolph and Chandler Owen, the owners of the Messenger magazine. They formed the organization with goals of garnering support from Black-owned businesses and helping provide African-American workers with training and labor union organizing techniques. Scroll down here. Despite its ambitious plans and its desire to differentiate itself from middle-class organizations, its greatest rival was Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association, which drew from the same working-class constituency that FNF hoped to organize. I mean, yeah, but you guys organized in 1920. Garvey established the UNIA in Jamaica in 1914. He establishes a chapter in New York in 1917. So for 3 years in America, Garvey has been organizing around the country and gained enough followers and momentum to have this conference in 1920. At this point, he's an international organization. So, of course, that's their biggest rival. But he's trying to pull from Garvey's pool. Garvey asked them to debate him. They didn't want to do it. From his founding convention in Washington, D.C. in 1920, you hear that, 1920, FNN leaders criticized the UNIA. By 1921, they had organized a Garvey Must Go campaign. Come on, man. Let's go. Let's go. Let's get it all out. All right, I'm about to wrap up. I actually went over time, but I want to also pull this up. Last thing on this Garvey. This undermining of the Garvey movement. Philosophy and opinions, and actually, like, this is from Philosophy and Opinions, but this is the actual document that they put in the Philosophy of Opinions. So this isn't no propaganda. This is an actual letter that was written to the U.S. Attorney General, U.S. Attorney General. And you see Garvey says the following vicious and wicked letter was written by a group of men whose names are appended here too, and directed to the Honorable Attorney General of the United States of America. And then he says, my comment will continue at the end of the communication. So this is a letter sent to the Attorney General by Black leaders. As the chief law enforcement officer of the nation, we wish to call your attention to a heretofore unconsidered menace to harmonious race relationships. There are in our midst certain Negro criminals and potential murderers, both foreign and American born, who are moved and actuated by intense hatred against the white race. These undesirables continually proclaim that all white men are enemies to the Negro. They have become so fanatical that they have threatened and attempted the death of their opponents, actually assassinating in one instance. The movement known as the Universal Negro Improvement Association, naming names, has done much to stimulate the violent temper of this dangerous element. Its president and moving spirit is one Marcus Garvey, an unscrupulous demigod who has ceaselessly and assiduously sought to spread among Negroes distrust and hatred of all white people. The official organ of the UNIA, the Negro World, of which Marcus Garvey is managing editor, sedulously and continually seeks to arouse ill feelings between the races. Evidence has also been presented of an apparent alliance of Garvey with the Ku Klux Klan. Yo, these people is off the hook. Y'all get the point. That's in the Philosophy and Opinions. You know, if you haven't read that, read that. And we might come back to that. I might just do a whole podcast on it. But hold on. Let's get some names though. I want to I'm gonna pull this back up. I'm not gonna go through this whole letter, right? But I mean, they signed off on this, just so you know. So when you look here, the signers of this letter are Harry H. Pace, Robert S. Abbott, Johnny Nell, Dr. Julia Coleman, William Pickens, Chandler Owens. Remember him? He's with A. Philip Randolph. Robert Bignall, George Harris. Harry H. Pace is president of the Pace Phonograph Corporation. As you can see, William Pickens, is field secretary of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Chandler Owen, again, we mentioned the Messenger and Friends of the Negro Freedom. Right. Robert Bignall is director of branches of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. These are the people who wrote to the Attorney General. You can't make this stuff up, man. So that was what was going on at that time. I don't even want to get into. I see the comments. Yeah, it was some serious snitching going on. So again, in Les Paynes' text, he brings this up. He doesn't go into the details, but he talks about Du Bois and Garvey, that the disagreement, I guess you could say, or the tension that existed between those two that will play out in newspapers. He gets into the colorism as well. He talks about the colorism that existed in Jamaica and how that is going to affect Garvey when he comes to the United States. And so he kind of, the colorism that exists in Jamaica, that dynamic is different than in the United States. And even though there's colorism in the United States, don't get me wrong, but it's different. Why is it different? In Jamaica, Jamaicans are representing the majority. Jamaican people are holding like the positions of power in Jamaica. You're going to see people, black people, in those positions. but there are going to be people who are of lighter hue, right? Those are people who are going to be holding a lot of those powerful positions in Jamaica. But Jamaica is still a colony. Don't get me wrong. Jamaica is going to be a colony up until, I think, the 1960s, correct? And even after that, they're still a colony. You know, they gained their independence, right? They gained their independence. But slavery is over. Jamaica is still a colony at that time, but you have a majority Black population. United States is different. White majority, and the Black community is being segregated within the United States, but there's still that colorism that we have in the U.S. that is going to play out among the community. This brings me to back to Malcolm, something I failed to mention. Malcolm talks about even him being light-skinned and how he feels as though he was treated favorably from his father as a result of his lighter hue. Not that his father wasn't proud to be Black, but he suspected it was a psychological effect of American society that caused his father to maybe unconsciously treat him better. Excuse me, y'all. But Malcolm said even himself, he thought he was better than folks because of his lighter skin. And he said later on he would come to hate every drop of that white blood that ran through his veins, particularly because of how his mother's mother was raped, and that's why his mother was so light. I'm stuffing up right now. It's time to bring it to a close. But yeah, so just to wrap it up again, like I think these was two important chapters to look at. Malcolm opening the chapter talking about that nightmare. Interesting to begin with that nightmare, and I think he begins with the nightmare because he understands how much of an impact it's going to have on his life, the trajectory he's going to be on as a result. If his father doesn't get killed by the Ku Klux Klan, does Malcolm end up in Boston? You know, does Malcolm end up in foster care even before he gets to Boston? No, of course. Yeah, both parents. Does his mother break down, have this psychological break as a result of what happened to his father, and then the pressure that the system is constantly trying to break the family up, telling her she's not fit to be a mother, right? She's constantly having to battle the system to keep her family together. She eventually breaks. So this is the American nightmare that Malcolm is experiencing as a child, that the Littles family is experiencing as children, I should say, right? Wilfred and Hilda having to become adults early, having to take care of the family because of the mother breaking down. So there's things that they weren't able to do due to the colonial conditions and the racism that's existing. Having to move from place to place. Philadelphia, not able to make a living in Philadelphia, going to Omaha, terrorized by the Ku Klux Klan. I can't recall if I mentioned this earlier, but it was the day that the Ku Klux Klan terrorizes the Littles family while Earl Little is in Milwaukee, that Earl Little decides that they're moving to Milwaukee, that they're going to leave their home in Omaha. Malcolm's not born, but the older children, they're upset because, mind you, Earl's two brothers live there with their family and children. So now their family, the Littles family is leaving. The children are leaving their cousins behind, right? So if there's not that terrorism by the Ku Klux Klan, does the Littles family leave and go to Milwaukee, or they stay in Omaha with their brothers, where they may have a bit of security there? So all of these things, right, is something that, you know, we have to think about, and think about how they represent hundreds of thousands, millions of Black people and families that are going through the same thing. And so here we are in 2025, right? Because what we're talking about 100 years. How many generations? 3 generations, 4 generations ago, right? Not that long, and still going through the terrorism and the attacks. And this is why revolution is the solution, man. Let's keep it funky. So yes, he was. Man, I just built. I don't know if you just got here, but I just spent probably like a half an hour building on that. Definitely put that up. But not just his father. Remember, his mother was a Garveyite. I used to do this a lot too. I used to say like the father, and then you have to realize like no, the father and mother were both Garveyites. They both were Garveyites, and they was hardcore Garveyites. And his mother, it wasn't his father that influenced his mother to become a Garveyite. It was Louise Little, her uncle, that influenced her, and I believe she was already going to the meetings. That's how they met. They met at a Garvey meeting. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think like that's where that attraction comes. Not Farrakhan though. Farrakhan comes later. As far as Farrakhan being a Garvey, actually, I don't want to say. I mean, you might have some information that I don't have. Elijah Muhammad, though, there is some research that says that he was going to Garvey meetings, that he was a Garveyite. Yes, indeed. I mean, this is around the same time when you the Moorish science, the Temple of Moorish Science, which was founded by Noble Drew Ali and the Nation of Islam, they recruited from the Garvey movement. A lot of their members were coming from the Garvey movement because Garvey, mind you, like that movement was being undermined. Garvey was deported in 1927. He would be incarcerated in 1925 and then spend 2 years in prison. And then he would be deported. So they weakened the Garvey movement, and a lot of these other organizations would I guess, use that as an opportunity to build their organizations. There would be a lot of offshoots coming out of the Garvey movement. So we can definitely build on that another time. And all right, this is the longest one I did, but I'm gonna close out. Appreciate everybody for jumping on. Again, we are going to do this every Tuesday and Sunday. The time I'm shooting for is the God hour. I want to do this at 7 o'clock, but sometimes I may push it to 8 and 9, depending on what's happening in life, right? I mentioned earlier there's the Malcolm X Festival that's going to be going on in Philadelphia, and I want to encourage folks, if you can, to donate to CMXD. That's Claim Malcolm X Day Philly, right? CMXD PHL 65. I'm a member of the Claim Malcolm X Day committee, and this is the 10th year that we are organizing this festival. We're 10 years in, but we want to make sure that this one is going to outshine anything that we did in the past. This is the 100th year of the birth of Malcolm X. He was born in 1925. Here we are, 2025, and we still carrying on that legacy. So definitely, if you want to support, give what you can, man. We ain't asking for much, because when we do it collectively, it all adds up. And if you do it, put WCC. WCC. All right, we charge colonialism in the note to let them know that it was that you was here on this podcast, and you was influenced to support. So last thing before we shut out, I actually wanted to play this earlier. This is from the X film, when Malcolm is telling his story. Spike Lee, he begins with, not the very beginning, but he in one of the part of the opening scene, he kind of gets into it. He segues into Malcolm mother. Actually, no. So just for clarity, the two books Malcolm X autobiography and The Dead Are Rising opened up with the Klan terrorizing Malcolm's mother. They're in Omaha, but the Spike Lee film opens up with the Milwaukee, what happens in Milwaukee when the Klan firebombs the Littles family's house. So Malcolm is born at this time. Malcolm is alive when this takes place, because he's 18 months when they're moving to Milwaukee. So that's a difference too, like the Spike Lee film. So again, Earl Little isn't there in Omaha when the Klan come, and they don't firebomb the house. They break some windows, but they leave. In Milwaukee, they firebomb the house, and they all had to come out, and that's when Earl Little, he shoots at the Klan. Now, Dr. John Henry Clark, when he was being interviewed, he actually talked about how he said something when Spike Lee asked him how he should open it up. Dr. John Henry Clark told him the opening scene should be that right there, like the firebombing of the house. So I wanted to make that distinction too, or at least clarify that, just to know the difference. So what I'm showing now is a scene from the X film when they're in Milwaukee, and then we're going to close out after that. So appreciate y'all for tapping in, and we will be back with Tuesday. I don't know what I'm going to be covering on Tuesday, so just stay tuned for that, man. I'll see what moves me. Was that? You know what? I gotta upload it, but before I upload it, hey, I'm gonna give you this.
For the first time in our history here, you find we have a tendency to want to come together. For the first time, we have a tendency to want to work together. And up till now, no organization on the American continent has tried to unite you and me with our brothers and sisters back home. At no time, none of them. Marcus Garvey did it, they put him in jail. They framed him, the government framed him, they put him in jail. Marcus Garvey tried. The only fear that exists is that you and I, once we get united, will also unite with our brothers and sisters. Journey was to Mecca to make myself an authentic Muslim and to bring them there up to date on the problems that our people who are Muslims have. Soon as we established our religious authenticity with the Muslim world, we set up the Organization of Afro-American Unity and took immediate steps to make certain that we would be in direct contact with our African brothers on the African continent. So the first step that has been taken, brothers and sisters, since Garvey died, to actually establish contact between the 22 million black Americans with our brothers and sisters back home was done by two organizations. Done first by the Muslim Mosque, which gave us direct ties with our brothers and sisters in Asia and Africa who are Muslims. And you know we've got to unite with them because there are 700 million Muslims. And we sure need to stop being the minority and become part of the majority. So, as Muslims, we united with our Muslim brothers in Asia and Africa, and as members of the Organization of African or Afro-American Unity, we set out on a program to unite our people on this continent with our people on the mother continent. And this frightened many interests in this country. Many people in this country who want to see us the minority and who don't want to see us taking too militant or too uncompromising a stand are absolutely against the successful regrouping or organizing of any faction in this country whose thought and whose thinking pattern is international rather than national, whose thought pattern, whose hopes and aspirations are worldly rather than just within the context of the United States border or the borderline of the United States. So this has been the purpose of the OAAU and also the Muslim Mosque, to give us direct links, direct contacts, direct communication and cooperation with our brothers and sisters all over the earth. And once we are successful in uniting ourselves with our people all over the world, it puts us in a position where we no longer are a minority who can be abused and walked upon. We become a part of the majority. And then if this man over here plays too rough, we got some brothers who can play as rough as he. So that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. Nah, powerful. You see, like Malcolm mentions Garvey in that. Now, just so you have a period, a time frame, right? A place to put that, right, in perspective. That's given in New York 6 days, February 15th, I believe, 16th or 15th. He leaves Detroit, goes back to New York after he gives what we know of as the last message speech, which the event in February is going to be focusing on. He gives that in Detroit on February 14th. House is firebombed the day before, February 13th. He moves. He goes back to New York. He discusses that in New York, but he also brings up Garvey. And there's not a lot of times, particularly like when he's in the Nation of Islam, you don't really hear him bring up Garvey as a member of the Nation of Islam. But that right there, 6 days before his assassination, he talks about Garvey and he talks about the OAAU doing something that no one has been able to do since Garvey. On a large scale, I guess, because definitely there has been attempts. So that was powerful, I think. Big up, man. Big up to Malcolm. So I actually didn't upload the video I wanted to show, so I'm just going to play it from YouTube. Again, this is the opening scene from the Spike Lee film.
There's somebody out there. Wake the kids.
We're all good Christians. Maybe it's time for you to leave this town.
I thought this was supposed to be a free country.
Fred, we warned you about all that Garvey preaching, stirring up the good niggers
I
here.
ain't a boy.
Next
I'm a
time
man.
You a dead nigger.
A real man don't hide behind no bed sheets. You take these here bullets for them sheets.
Oh, no!
Well, I know you were better shot than that. You should have killed him. You should have shot all them crackers dead.
I just wanted to scare them. They won't be around here bothering us no more. They won't be here no time soon. I'm a man!
That'll teach you, nigga.
Ah!
Stop right there. Yeah, man. So that's the Spike Lee film right there. Oh, and the UNIA, Garvey is supposed to have been in bed with the Ku Klux Klan. Man, these folks crazy. Yeah, we can see the Klan was terrorizing Garveyites wherever they were, and Garveyites wasn't standing for it. They were fighting back. That's the whole thing about it. The Marcus Garvey himself talked about, you lynch us, we're gonna lynch you. Right? That was Garvey's attitude. I wish I had that queued up. But anyway, part of the reason too that they were being targeted is because of the efforts of Malcolm X's parents organizing people to come into the Garvey movement, right? Spreading Garveyism in those communities, right? So yeah, with that being said, forever, backward, never. I will see you guys hopefully on Tuesday. This Tuesday. We'll see what we're covering, man. But y'all have a good night. Peace, peace. Appreciate y'all. Uhuru.
The white power structure, because that's all we have in America. And the white power structure today is just as much interested in perpetuating slavery as the white power structure was 100 years ago. Only now they use modern methods of doing so. And realizing that the black people in this country are waking up and becoming filled with a desire to be looked upon as men and as human beings. The white power structure, to slow down that struggle for freedom and human dignity, uses tricks. 100 years ago they could do it with chains. Today they use tricks. And one of the tricks that they've invented is this token integration. To get Negro, so-called Negro leaders to accept a few token crumbs of integration that don't solve any problem for the masses of black people in this country whatsoever, but it does make the hand-picked Negroes be satisfied to slow down the cry of the masses. And a good example of that is as soon as the spirit of rebellion or revolution began to spread among the masses of black people in this country, and they began to take an active part, and they showed that they weren't confined to this nonviolent approach, then the government or the power structure began to sit up and take notice and